Have you ever been to the doctor and he or she's like, your spleen aqueous is inflamed and the blood test shows an elevation of your achio sorrow anguish cell count. This seems to be a clear case of hepasepticemia. And you're like, what? And the doctor's like, yeah, you're gassy. And you're like, why didn't you just say that? Doctors like to use big words, or they just like to mess with you. So, learning a little bit of basic anatomy, aka what body parts are called, and gaining a fundamental knowledge of how organs work, aka physiology, goes a long way toward helping you manage your personal health and wellness. Some of the most basic terminology you will hear clinicians use has to do with relative location. Superior means above, inferior means below, proximal means near, distal means far, anterior means front, and posterior means back. We live in a world where imaging plays a big role in making a diagnosis. Most of those images are still in 2D, which means they are taken on a plane. The primary planes of the body are sagittal, coronal, and transverse. Clinicians often use specific terminology to indicate location within the body. Major regions of the body include the abdominal and thoracic cavity, and inside the thoracic cavity, the cardiac cavity exclusively houses the heart. Everything that is us is made of cells, all the way down to your fingernails, your nose hair, and that nasty mole that you sometimes think about seeing the doctor about. They are all made of cells. Actually, all living things are made of cells. We just happen to have a lot of them, and as mammals, our cells are relatively complex. As Homo sapiens, we have between 75 and 100 trillion of them. I have trouble wrapping my brain around that number because it is so enormously large, but it's more than our national debt, so I know it's a lot. Each cell has an enormous number of interworking parts. We call those parts organelles. The organelles create an individual cell's structure and ultimately determine its function. It is the organelles that provide for cell differentiation. And wow, do cells ever differ from each other. Skin cells look like this, and brain cells look like this. All the organelles are important, but there are three that are really important to human life. They include the nucleus, the ribosomes, and the mitochondria. Inside the nucleus of every cell in your body, you can find an exact duplicate of your entire genetic code. The genetic code is the blueprint or instructions that indicate how to build you. That's why twins look similar. They have the same plan. Every cell in your body has an exact copy of all 3 billion instructions found in your DNA, and that copy is located within the nucleus. Although all cell types are different, all of your cells have exactly the same DNA. It is the same in every cell in your body, even though they look different. Just because two cells look different doesn't mean that they have different DNA. The individual cells are just reading different parts of the code. Just like you can read different pages of Lego instructions, so too can your cells read different pages or sections of the DNA code. Whether we're talking about the building blocks of life or Lego blocks, we can see that small number of parts can make dramatically different things. Every human cell has a multitude of ribosomes. These can be thought of as the manufacturing plants. Ribosomes assemble building blocks to make stuff. In particular, they build proteins. This allows for cells to be constructed from the inside out. This doesn't seem very intuitive, but I assure you, cells are built from the inside out. A cell is of no use unless it has energy to do something. Guys, you could have the coolest car in the history of cars, but if you don't have any gasoline, you will never be able to go pick up that date. Interestingly, two very specific types of cells do get dates. We'll talk about that later. The mitochondria are responsible for producing ATP, or the energy that allows cells to function. Organelles form cells. Cells form tissue, and tissues form organs. The major organs of the body include the brain, heart, lungs, stomach, pancreas, liver, kidneys, small intestine, skin, and college students' favorite organs, the reproductive organs. The brain is the control center of the nervous system, and it uses neural impulses to send signals through the nervous system to all parts of the body. A neural impulse is nothing more than an electrical charge. The specialized structure of nerve cells allows them to receive an electrical impulse and subsequently send that charge right down the line to the next nerve cell. This process of passing an electrical charge allows a message to be sent from the brain to any part of the body. So it's electrical activity that originates in my brain that allows me to wiggle my fingers, move food through my intestines, and do important things like breathe. Subsections of the brain include the reptilian complex, the paleomammalian complex, and the neomammalian complex. The reptilian complex, or reptile brain, is so termed because all vertebrates, including reptiles, have this part of the brain in common, and it does pretty mundane stuff. The prefix paleo means ancient. The paleo-mammalian complex, or what is oftentimes called the limbic system, plays a big role in emotion, behavior, and motivation. For example, my limbic system is largely involved in telling me I'm hungry. I love me some carrots. The limbic system is also involved in the formation of memories. Thus, I will be able to remember tomorrow that I love me some carrots. Lastly, and by far most importantly, the neo-mammalian complex, or the new brain. It is involved in higher level thinking so that you can ponder this information later today and make a conscious decision about how you want to apply it to your life. The lungs are responsible for respiration, and they allow the all-important element oxygen to perfuse into our blood. The heart is responsible for pumping blood throughout the entire body. The heart is actually two separate pumps within the same structure, the right pump and left pump. The right side of the heart pumps blood to the lungs, and the left side pumps blood throughout the remainder of the body. It has 4 chambers. Blood flows into the right atrium, then is pumped to the right ventricle. The right ventricle pumps blood to the lungs, where it picks up oxygen. The newly oxygenated blood then returns to the left atrium and is pumped into the left ventricle, where the very muscular left ventricle pumps blood all the way to the top of your head and down to the tips of your toes, and there's enough pressure remaining after it gets to its destination for the blood to make its way all the way back to the right atrium, where we rinse and repeat. Moving inferior or lower in the body is the liver. The liver is a complicated organ with lots of functions, but for simplicity's sake, it is responsible for detoxification, removing stuff like alcohol. It also synthesizes cholesterol because, we need more cholesterol. The stomach is important in breaking down food into more manageable units. The fluid in the stomach is extremely acidic and can have a pH below 2. That level of acidity will eat the paint right off of your car, so don't puke out the window. We will address how to prevent this altogether in a later lecture. The pancreas is just inferior or below the stomach. Its primary function is to release insulin when blood sugar levels are high. Blood sugar, glucose, they are one and the same. Having lots of sugar in your blood makes for a very unhealthy atmosphere in the circulatory system. So insulin serves as a signal to cells throughout the entire body to accept sugar from the blood. This serves to bring the sugar level in the blood back to a normal level. When you drink a soda pop or eat a candy bar, it puts massive amounts of energy into your blood because of how quickly your gastrointestinal system can digest that food. So really, insulin allows us to store excess energy quickly. Might there be a relationship between the availability of sugar in our children's diets and the dramatically increasing levels of childhood obesity? Yep. Kidneys, yes, plural, there are 2 of them, are largely responsible for the acid-base regulation, which in turn regulates blood pressure. They serve as a natural filter and help remove massive amounts of dead cell stuff, parts, components, whatever you want to call them. Over time, you largely urinate yourself away. Good thing we have mitosis to replace us. Anterior and inferior to the kidneys, or in front of and below, is the small intestine, shown here in orange. The small intestine is a tube, a 25-foot long tube. Absorption of vitamins, minerals, protein, fat, and carbohydrates occurs primarily in the small intestine. Your food is moved from one end to the other via peristalsis. That's a fancy word for muscular contraction. Although not often thought of as being an organ, the skin actually is an organ. In and of itself, it's an organ. The skin's primary function is to serve as a barrier. Each and every day you come in contact with pathogenic bacteria, viruses, parasites. They can only cause illness if they get into the body. The skin does a pretty good job of keeping the bad stuff out. However, if there's even so much as a teeny tiny break in the skin, the bad stuff can get in. That's how you get things like cold sores. As it relates to the skin, it's important to remember that although the skin does a pretty good job of keeping the bad stuff out and the good stuff in, if you forget to wash your skin before you eat or pick your nose, you may very well personally be putting the bad stuff in. Wash your hands. Lastly, and of special interest to college students, the reproductive organs. Females have ovaries and men have testes. The reproductive organs house the gametes, or sex cells. A gamete coming from an ovary is called an ovum. A gamete coming from a testes is called a sperm. As far as cells go, the ovum is huge. The sperm, they are of a much more average size. When they join and combine via meiosis, forming an individually unique genome, that is conception. And that one single solitary cell has the ability to grow into something really cool like you. If you want to continue getting smarter with us about your personal health and wellness, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter.
For those of you who like to know more of the advanced physiology of what's going on with a torque release technique adjustment is that your nervous system sends all of the signals out at a denominator frequency of 10 hertz. So the vagus nerve fires at 10 hertz a second, which is different than your digestive system, which is different than your heart, which is different than your lungs. That's why those organs all have different functions. Now what happens is stress comes in over time and it changes that frequency. It changes the amount of times a signal is getting sent from the brain down the spinal cord out your nerves to those organs, tissues, and cells. And what that changes to is a pathological frequency or reflex. That pathological reflex is at a 64 hertz frequency. All right, that frequency is pathological or abnormal in nature. And that's what then starts to cause issues and pain in the body. That's why cancer forms, is because there's a wrong signal being sent and too many cells are being made, or tumors, or pain, or a breakdown in your heart, or cholesterol problems, or digestive system issues, or foot burning. All happen because that frequency is no longer getting through at that 10 hertz. Now, torque release technique in the integrator adjusts those reflexes and changes those back to a 10 hertz frequency. The integrator fires at 1/10,000th of a second, which breaks those 64 hertz patterns, those abnormal patterns, to allow your body to create new healthy patterns. It's a neuroplasticity that happens of your body going from old bad patterns to new better patterns.